Hey guys, this is Crazy Carl back with R.U.S.E for Dummies Part 2. This one is going to be focused on units. Here you see a fully built base. Every building has been built in order to build every unit, so I can show you every unit in the game, or at least a little bit about what each building is able to build in the game, starting with the barracks. So let's get started. In some barracks you'll find it, in some barracks you won't. A recon unit. They're usually unarmed. You can tell it's a recon unit because of the binocular logo at the bottom left corner of the unit. Common to every barracks is obviously the infantry. You usually have light and heavy. Some you have to research, some you don't. In the case of the Americans, which I'm playing with right now, you do have to research the Rangers, so I'm going to do that right now. Infantry is pretty much good against anything. Great for rushing stationary units, and they can go in woods, in towns, etc., and so forth. Moving on to the artillery and anti-air base. Here, the Americans, you have the Bofors, which are the stationary AA that you can put in the woods, and they're good in quantity. They're good support for fighters, but if you really want to take down aircraft and do it in a very efficient way, you probably want an armored anti-aircraft gun like the M19s and the M16s of the Americans. Also in the artillery and anti-air base, you will find obviously artillery. So here you have the Priest and you have the M40s. Like most other units, you have to choose to research the heavy armored or the advanced version of the unit. In this case, the M40. So we're gonna do that. Moving on to the armor base. In the armor base, you obviously find your tanks, and for the most part, you will find also an armored recon in almost every armor base. And that's usually the pretty good ones that you want to build. They're sort of essential, so they can you can have recon out there and not get taken out very often. In the case of the Americans, it's the Greyhound. Great armored recon, great against infantry, can go in the woods. Then you have your light tanks, and this is a good case in which to show that you can pretty much research a version of almost every unit. Your light tanks and your medium tanks, you can either go ahead and build some Lees, or you can research the Sherman and then start building those instead. The Americans have light tanks, medium tanks, and jumbo tanks. They don't have heavy tanks. So the jumbo tank is the Pershing. You won't see an advanced version of the jumbo tank here on the armor base, because for the Americans that is inside of the prototype base, which I will show you in a minute. Moving on to the anti-tank base, you have your stationary AATs. The M1s, 57s are the basic for the Americans. These can go in the woods. You can set up ambushes, secure bottleneck areas, and they're usually pretty powerful with quantity. You can take out an enemy offense pretty easily with some of those well-placed ATs. And if you want to be on the move, then you want to have some tank destroyers. Jacksons are the best tank destroyers for the American nation, and they are expensive to research and to build. So with advanced units comes also cost, and of course if you lose an advanced unit, it counts a lot more against you than if you lose a non-advanced light unit. Moving on to the airfield, every airfield has an armed air recon, and that's true for all nations. No nations have armed air recon. You can tell that they're air recon by the binocular logo again. Here you see the airborne elite infantry of the Americans. For the Americans, you have to research the paratroopers. For the British, you don't, for example. So it's just an example of what the difference in nations. And then common to almost every airfield is the fighters, fighter bombers, and bombers. Fighters are obviously great for what they're known for, which is to fight for air fights against other planes and airplanes, and the fighter bombers are a mixture between the bombers and the fighters, which are great against tanks. And then the bombers are great for taking out pretty much anything, except that against heavy armory you want to have fighter bombers instead, because they do dive bombing, and those are the ones that really kick ass when dealing with tanks and other heavy armored units. Moving on to the prototype base, again, each prototype base will have different units depending on the nations. For the Americans, you have some heavy artillery that are pretty beastly. You also have some rocket launcher tanks, which are very unique, and they kick butt pretty much against anything. They do not fire air units, so they're not rocket AAs. They are ground AAs. I'm sorry, they're ground rocket launchers. So Americans also have the crocodile tanks, which are the flamethrowers, and they are great against infantry. They're okay. They do okay against other things such as buildings and a little bit against tanks, but they're just great against infantry. And then the best tank in the game for the Americans, which is the T-95 advanced jumbo tank. Like I told you before, the advanced version of the jumbo tank for the Americans is at the prototype base as opposed to in its armored base. So those will be different prototype bays will do different units, so you have to get used to that and learn which units are best for your nation. Here I'm just going to show you a little bit about how to place the units. You or how to build the units. You basically click on as many of the quantity as you want those units build, and then you position where do you want them sent. The only exception of those are the air units, in which you will have a nice little menu at the bottom left showing you which units you have built. You will not have to place your units as soon as you build them, so they will just pretty much stay on the airfield waiting for instructions. Another thing that I'll show you right here is what happens when you're trying to build units and you run out of resources, which is a nice little message at the very bottom, red message that's going to tell you, hey bozo, you don't have enough supplies. So that pretty much covers it as far as units. You're gonna have to learn on your own which units do better against others. Would just be too much for tutorial R.U.S.E for Dummies style kind of video. So I will leave you guys with this, and I will see you when part 3 comes out, which will be based on R.U.S.E cards. Take it easy, Crazy Carl signing out.